because there is this very beautiful connection with the connective tissue of the body, the fascia, we've created this lovely intersection between Chinese medicine and helping the qi flow, the current of qi flowing better through those meridian lines. We've then been able to adapt that onto the yin yoga practice and make that through line. But here's where it gets really tricky. So most people in a yin yoga teacher training would be learning about 5-element acupuncture or 5-element theory, or they will be learning about the traditional Chinese medicine theory, the yin-yang organ pairing theory. They themselves are two schools of thought, but there are many, many others. Let's talk about the yin-yang organ pairing system. This is where we've got a yin organ and a yang organ, and they form a pair. The pairing is there because those two organs within the organs themselves, but also the wider, broader function of what those organs do, they have a relatability to one another. But also, if you track the lines in the body where those meridians flow, at some point, let's use the heart and the small intestine meridian, for example, the heart meridian will start up into the armpit on both sides of the body. And because it's a yin channel, it travels down the inside, the yin side of the arm, and it comes all the way down to the end of the little finger. Its yang paired channel is the small intestine, which starts where the heart channel ends in this example. And because it's a yang organ, it travels up the yang side of the arm, which is the back, and it travels all the way up the shoulder, and it ends up migrating up onto the face. So physiologically, these particular meridians will make a loop together. So that's one of the reasons why they are paired. If a very enthusiastic yin yoga teacher who's just learned about this information, they might be really inspired to create a sequence that encompasses those two channels, so the inside and the outside of the arm, and they might start talking about the heart and the heart's functions in a Chinese medicine framework. So we've got things like governing blood and controlling sweat. We might talk about the emotions, joy in the heart or joylessness. We might talk about the complexion. And what they may be doing is reeling off a lot of signs and symptoms in the body. And this can start to get a little bit tricky, because if you are a participant in that class and you don't really know anything about Chinese medicine, but you've suddenly been given a list, a new list to think about of what the heart does, or a new list to think about what the small intestine does, or a new list to think about what the liver does. And you're doing a particular sequence for those organs without it being necessarily said in the class, although maybe it is being said. You might start to think, oh, if I stretch out the inside of my arm, that's going to be good for my heart. Maybe that'll help with my high blood pressure. Or maybe that'll help with some other Western disease that you've got. Maybe that'll help for my palpitations. Maybe, and then these links begin to get made between the functions that are attributed to that organ in Chinese medicine and the kinds of Western diseases that we probably know a lot better from our Western medicine framework. Can you already see how that can be a little bit tricky? So the kinds of things that I think can come up for people in that, let's use the lower back for a good example. If you were teaching a yin yoga sequence that was inspired by the bladder and kidney meridians of the body, because they make a pair, they have a really strong connection to the spine. And there's a section of that that's running through the lower back. If you were creating a sequence for those organs, you'd probably be doing at least some forward folds in that sequence, and you might be doing some back bends in that sequence. And typically, for people that spend a lot of time in forward folds, we're going to be targeting the deep connective tissue of the lower back, the thoracolumbar fascia of the lower back. And this is a very, very dense diamond of tissue at the lower back, which in my experience doesn't always get the yin exercise that it needs. My thinking around that is that people are usually told that they have to strengthen up their lower back or strengthen up their core to strengthen up their lower back, but we don't often get encouraged to stretch and stress that tissue in the way that yin yoga teaches us it needs. So what could happen in that particular class for somebody is the teacher's talking about all these things to do with the kidneys, or they might be talking about things to do with the bladder, and we're doing, say, 2 or 3 forward folds. Now, often that thoracolumbar connective tissue can take a long time to rebound. So it might even take half the class after you've done caterpillar or butterfly for that dull, aching feeling in the lower back to start to subside. But what people will usually do when they feel a sensation that they're not sure about is to think that something's gone wrong. So if they've had somebody in the class reeling off all of these kidney signs and symptoms or kidney functions, and they've been told we're doing a sequence for kidneys, and they go home that night and they go to bed and their lower back is still lingering with an aching sensation, or maybe it lingers into the next day, some of those people will think, oh, there must be something wrong with my kidneys. That gets tricky. And we don't want people to be worried about their body. We don't want people to have to kind of take in information and then connect all these different dots and see how they measure up according to these new systems of health that they're being given in their yin yoga class. It's just too confusing. So I think we just have to be really, really careful about cause and effect language, or getting inspired by the ideas from Chinese medicine and then bringing them to the yin yoga space in a very reductionist way.